Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Cristina Contreras-Fox with the Rhode Island Coalition for the Homeless. It is 11 o'clock on the dot, so we are going to get started. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. The webinar today is everything you need and want to know about the economic impact payment, also known as the stimulus check, or as we've been calling it around the office, the stimmy checks. So we're going to talk about what it is, how you access it, and how you can get help with that. I'm muting myself. My name is Cristina Contreras-Fox. I'm the policy analyst for the Rhode Island Coalition for the Homeless, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. If you'd like to connect after the webinar about this issue or anything else, policy or advocacy related, please feel free to connect with me. Email is on there. I would love to speak with you. The presenters on our webinar today will be State Treasurer Seth Magaziner, Catherine LeBlanc from the Social Security Administration, Caitlin Frumeri from the Rhode Island Coalition for the Homeless, Linda Katz from the Economic Progress Institute, and Kanika Pook from the Center for Southeast Asians and the State VITA program. So this is a truly stellar lineup of really knowledgeable, fantastic people. Really appreciative and really glad to have your expertise on the call with us today.
Christina, you're on again.
Yeah, Christina, I think you're muted again.
Christina, can you?
Yeah, it keeps muting and unmuting me, but thanks for pointing that out, folks. I will make sure I'm always unmuted when I'm speaking. So just a little bit of housekeeping. I just showed, make sure, if you want to speak, make sure you are unmuted. Attendees, you probably, when you logged in, got a message that said you are in listen only mode. Your audio pin to take yourself out of listen only mode is 553-160-163. I also sent that in the email with the slide deck and all of the materials. Excuse me. So a couple other things. If you are, unless you're talking, if you could please, most folks are already on mute, but if you could please mute yourself to reduce the background noise. And that way you don't have to hear me say every 10 seconds, could somebody please mute? If you have questions, there is going to be a question and answer section at the end of the presentation. But if you have questions, please feel free to send them via the dashboard as they arrive. My coworker, Yaliska Baretza, is going to be monitoring that and collecting all of the questions to make sure that we can get them and answer them in a timely fashion. So you can send them in there. Excuse me. And as I mentioned at the very end, there's going to be a Q&A with Caitlin, Linda, and Catherine. If that's when we're going to really open it up to the group, you can submit them via chat or you can unmute yourself. And just if you are speaking, please make sure you introduce yourself by name, share your pronouns if you're comfortable, and then ask your question. We ask you that you introduce yourself just so we know who's speaking, and that way if there are any follow-up questions, we know who to connect with and follow up with after the webinar. Okay, so now I'm gonna run through the agenda really quickly. So we're going to first cover what is an economic impact payment, or EIP. So I'm going to give a little bit of background of how this came about, how folks can use it, what the timeline is. Then we're going to go into how you can apply. So who qualifies this, how will folks receive their money? And then Linda Katz is going to give some more specific information about this and how it impacts certain beneficiaries of public programs here in Rhode Island. Then we'll have a very robust section about community resources. So what is available to help folks access their EIP, and also some other financial resources and tax resources that are good and there for you, not just now, but in the future. And we'll be joined by the State Treasurer of Rhode Island, Seth Magaziner, and also Kanika Pook will be speaking about the VITA program, and also she'll be going into what are some of the scams that are now coming out that are trying to take advantage of folks who are receiving EIPs. So really important information there. Then after that, for the remainder of the webinar will be an open question and answer session, and that will be facilitated by Caitlin Frumeri from the Coalition for the Homeless, Linda Katz from the Economic Progress Institute, and Catherine LeBlanc from the Social Security Administration. And there to your right, or to my right, I think it's your right too, the funny little meme from The Simpsons, 1,200 tacos for $1,200. I could sure go for 1,200 tacos. I sure could, especially under these circumstances. Okay, so to begin with, what is an economic impact payment? So EIPs were authorized by the CARES Act, which is the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. It's also been called the Coronavirus Stimulus Package, Coronavirus Relief Package. This was a massive piece of legislation that was passed by Congress last month. These payments are an attempt to help Americans cover basic expenses, since so many folks are out of work or have lost income as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. So the way that this comes is, this is a direct payment made to help Americans cover expenses. The maximum payment for an EIP is $1,200, $1,200 per adult, and $500 per dependent child. Now, since this is, I mean, if you're familiar with universal basic income, like the idea of you just send everybody $1,000 or $2,000 every month, it's kind of along the same lines. There are no limitations, no restrictions on how you can spend your EIP, but many folks are using them to buy groceries, pay rent, medical expenses. They're using them to take care of basic resources. One important thing that I want to note, this is not something that you have to pay back. Excuse me. And this payment doesn't count as income with regards to other means tested benefits. So if you are a SNAP recipient or Medicaid recipient, et cetera, you receiving EIP is not going to tip you over past the income limit to be able to qualify for that benefit. The Economic Progress Institute has issued a really excellent guidance called COVID-19 Understanding Economic Impact Payments, which has a lot of really great information for folks to review. Also, the EIP is managed by the, oh, excuse me, we have a little guest. Come on. Yeah. Thanks, Frida. Frida's really passionate about taxes and communicating this information to folks. That the EIP is also managed by the U.S. Treasury via the IRS. So the IRS is the body that's sending out these payments, et cetera. And they have a lot of information on their website. I'm going to be referencing the IRS and their website and their materials quite frequently throughout the presentation. I also want to highlight that the Social Security Administration also has a centralized page on their website that deals with their response to COVID-19. You can also there sign up for their email list. And if you are somebody who is a Social Security recipient or works with folks who are recipients, I highly recommend that you sign up for the newsletter, because there are so many updates. There's actually, I'm going to get to this a little bit later in the presentation, there was a big update that just came through today that we're going to be communicating, and they're coming in quickly, and like it feels like every 10 seconds. So highly recommend signing up for their listserv. So how do you apply? Now, if you filed a tax return last year, or I believe either last year and in 2018, your EIP will be sent however you requested that return. So if you entered in your bank account info for direct deposit, you're going to receive that EIP via direct deposit in that bank account. If you opted to have your return check mailed, your EIP will be sent as a check to that address. Now, one thing I want to note, your income does impact your EIP. If you have an AGI, or an adjusted gross income of $75,000 or less for an individual, or $150,000 or less for married couples, you're going to receive the full stimulus amount, which is $1,200 per individual, $2,400 per married couple. If your AGI is above $99,000 a year for single filers, or $198,000 a year for married couples, you're not eligible, nor are those folks who are over 16 that you might claim as dependents. For people who are in between, your benefits prorated. More of this is included in the presenter notes that I sent out. But the most important takeaway in here is, like I said, if you filed your tax return, your EIP is going to come to you however you requested that return. If you did not file a tax return last year or the year before, the IRS created a portal for non-filers. The website is there. You can click on that. It will bring you to the portal. I did not apply through that since I filed a tax return last year, but I went and I looked at I tried to click through the portal as far as it would take me, and it seemed fairly user-friendly, and I've gotten that feedback from other folks that it's fairly user-friendly. So if you've ever signed up for, say, a subscription or an account like that, or if you've ever, signed up for a social media account, it's along the same lines. It's about as user-friendly, which is good. Now, one thing that I want to stress, though, if you have never filed a tax return, because there are some income limits and some other circumstances which some folks, if you fall under these categories, you aren't legally required to file a tax return. For example, if you are an individual and you've made less than $12,200 in a year. However, even if you haven't filed, if you haven't been legally required to file, we highly, highly recommend that you try to file a tax return. You might qualify for more credits besides just this stimulus payment. You might qualify for an earned income tax credit, or if you had earned income last year and you have children or dependents, you might qualify for childcare or any of those sorts of tax credits. And we want to make sure that you're not leaving money on the table. So it's worth it to apply and file a return this year. And I know Linda and Kanika and others will touch on that a little bit more. But I want to emphasize that if you've never filed before, it's probably a good time to do now. You don't want to leave money on the table. Now, one other thing I want to point out, if you are a Social Security or SSI recipient, your EIP will arrive however you receive your benefit. So that's actually a fairly new update. Thanks to a lot of strong advocacy and folks making their voices heard, we were able to remove the barriers to allow for SS and SSI and other federal beneficiaries to receive their EIP easily without having to jump through more hoops. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit further in the presentation as well. So to help determine your eligibility, for sitting there thinking to yourself, am I eligible? We have this handy flow chart. So you can look through, number one, do you have a Social Security number? If you do not have a Social Security number, you are not currently eligible for an EIP or a relief check, which is a huge gap in this is a significant gap in the EIP net, right? Folks who don't have Social Security numbers, such as our undocumented neighbors who are being hugely impacted in a hugely negative way by this, are not eligible for this relief, even though many of them do pay into Social Security and do pay other taxes. There are other gaps. There's dependents over 16. Any person who's over the age of 18 that's claimed as a dependent on another person's taxes, so that can include college students, seniors, adults with disabilities. If you're a couple and you're filing jointly, but one person does not have a Social Security number, neither of you can receive a check. There are some exceptions to that, including military families, and it's really, really critical that we continue to advocate for resources and supports to help these communities, because just because you're not eligible for an EIP does not mean you don't need it. Plenty of folks need this help. We need to keep fighting for all, right? All of us or none of us. Now, one important thing that I want to announce, that this was an update that just came today. It's an important action for folks who are Social Security beneficiaries with dependents who aren't filing tax returns. You need to take action now in order to receive the $500 child payment credit. So in addition to the EIP, the $1,200 direct payment, there is also a $500, there's a $500 per child per dependent credit that folks can qualify for. So though there is a deadline tomorrow for Social Security retirement, survivors, and disability insurance beneficiaries with dependent children who did not file taxes in 2018 or 2019, you should immediately go to the IRS webpage, onto the non-filer portal that I had in the previous slide, and this is also, again, in the presenter notes, and you should all have the slide deck. You should go to that portal to provide your information immediately. You need to act by tomorrow, Wednesday, April 22nd, in order to receive these additional payments for your eligible children quickly. Excuse me. So by doing this, you'll be able to receive your EIP and all the $1,200 and the $500 as well. Those with direct express debit cards who enter the information on the IRS website, you can complete all of the mandatory questions, but you can leave the bank account information section blank. Excuse me. There's literally a cat in the bag. Frida, stop it. So folks who have children and are working during this time of coronavirus, my deepest respect and admiration for your juggling parenthood and your professional job, because I have a cat and that's that's enough for me, right? So as I was saying, direct express debit card, folks who get their benefits through a direct express debit card, you should go onto the IRS portal, fill out all of your information, but you can leave the bank account information blank if you don't have a bank account. SSI recipients will need to take action later this month. The deadline is to be announced. As soon as we have that information, we'll send it out to everybody. But the presenter notes include the link to the press release that the Social Security Administration sent out that has all of these details and more. So when can I expect money? All right, I'm just giving up. This is free to everybody. So the EIPs, many people have already received their EIPs. They've been distributed in several rounds via direct deposit already. However, if you are receiving a paper check, that check might take months to arrive. So I highly recommend you utilize the IRS portal. You utilize the IRS portal to receive your EIP as soon as possible. Now, Social Security recipients, SSI recipients, et cetera, if you get benefits from Social Security, you will be receiving your EIP electronically. And that also includes folks who receive Veterans Affairs benefits and railroad pensions. However you receive that benefit, that's how you'll get your EIP. But again, if you are getting the paper check, if you think you'll be getting the paper check, highly recommend utilizing the IRS portal so you can get that as soon as possible. I mean, I've read articles that say that checks could come by the end of the summer or as late as October. They're also being held up right now because the president has made the decision that he wants to have every single check stamped with his personal signature. So that's delayed distribution even further. And who knows what's going to happen. So just if you can utilize that IRS portal. There's also more information on the IRS website about how you can receive your money and when you can expect your money. Now, what if you don't have an address or a bank account? So thanks to really strong advocacy efforts, certain federal beneficiaries will not necessarily have to open a bank account to receive your IEP electronically. So if, like I mentioned in the last slide, if you receive any of these federal benefits, these following, so Social Security, retirement, SSDI, survivor benefits, SSI, if you receive Veterans Affairs benefits, railroad retirement benefits, your EIP is going to come in the same way. Now, if you don't have a bank account or if you don't have a residential address, a paper check can be sent to a mailing address. We're going to be putting together a one-pager that has some friendly community banking options. I know the treasurer, when he comes on, he's going to be talking about the work his office has done to provide resources for underbanked communities. I know they've done some spectacular work over the past several years. But if you are thinking of opening a bank account, which I understand, bank accounts come with fees, overdraft fees, monthly maintenance fees, et cetera. So I don't want to advise someone to open one of those if that's going to put you further in debt. If you can't handle the fees, totally understandable and fair. But there are some local banks and credit unions, especially, that have some options, such as Navigant Credit Union, Pawtucket Credit Union, et cetera. We're going to put that together to send out to folks. So if you were thinking of opening a bank account, we can point you in some good directions. Excuse me. So now I want to go over some important considerations related to the economic impact payments. So number one, EIPs are not exempt from private debt collection. And the way that this will most likely will come through from most folks, if your EIP is deposited in a bank account and you are overdrawn, the bank can use the EIP. However, if you are, and Linda, if you want to cover this in your slides a little bit, because I know I am not going to say this as articulately as you can, but the fact that the EIP is not exempt from private debt collection does not necessarily mean that your check or your payment is going to come to you with whatever debt you have already scooped out of it. You will receive the full EIP with one major exception. I'm going to talk about that in a second, but it's not like a private debt collector can call the IRS and say, hey, wait, before you send this check to Christina Fox, she owes me $300 from, from a utility account in arrears from an apartment she rented 6 years ago. I need that $200 before you can send that payment or send that check. That is not the case. But there are some garnishments that are applicable. Number one, and I believe this is the only case actually, child support arrears may be withheld from your EIP if the arrearage has been registered by a state with the IRS. Other overpayments, such as overpayment of unemployment insurance, also known as UI, public benefits like SNAP, or overpayment of taxes cannot be withheld from your EIP. Another really important thing to note for if someone is in a situation where they are a victim of domestic violence, or if they're a survivor, or if you're working with folks in these situations, if you need to change your bank account info, you can do so at the IRS website. And that information is confidential and private to you. For survivors who will be getting a paper check and need to add a new mailing address, you can inform the IRS of that mailing address change at the link listed there. Unfortunately, changing your mailing address is going to very likely further delay your payment. It may take, according to the IRS website, it may take 4 to 6 weeks for an address change to process. So that is an important thing to note. But again, if you are in this situation and you need to receive this, you can change bank account information. You can also get more information on the IRS website. So that ends my and Frida's time here. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm now going to turn it over to Linda Katz, who is the co-founder and policy director of the Economic Progress Institute, and she is going to cover some more updates and provide specific information about how EIP impacts certain public beneficiaries here in Rhode Island. So thank you very much, and Linda, you have the floor.
Thank you, Christina. Thanks so much for including us on this really important webinar, and also for referencing the fact sheet we've posted on our website. I do want to say, since we posted it last Thursday, and immediately after that, some changes were made by the US in the fact that SSI recipients will get the benefits directly, and that veterans will also receive the benefits directly. It's important to note, as you point out, that if those folks have they need the non-filer portal to be able to get benefits for the dependents, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. But I just wanted folks to know, we've been posting information on our website related to this in the time of COVID. So I encourage our website to go there. COVID-19 info. Two issues that I wanted to talk about are among the people who are not going to get direct deposit or direct payment. There still are families that are in our cash assistance plan. One is Rhode Island Works program, which is families, very family, children under the age of 18, and they're either their parents, caretaker relatives. And the benefit amount is $554 for a family of 3. So people getting Rhode Island Works are very poor. There are around 4,000 families that get Rhode Island Works benefits, and we've been talking with the Department of Human Services to conduct outreach to let Rhode Island Works families know about the availability of the payment and to help them claim it. And the same for the GPA folks, which I'll talk about in a minute. So there's sort of 3 buckets of families that are enrolled in Rhode Island Works. Many parents have not worked in, who have not worked in 2019. They want to file through the non-filer portal, the simple way of filing for the stimulus payment, and they would get that for themselves and their kids. If the parent has had earnings in 2019, as Christina mentioned, people don't have to file a tax return unless they meet a tax filing threshold. So some people may have had earnings below that threshold, not filed a tax return in 2019. They really should file, all of the Rhode Island Works families should file a full tax return, because they can get much more money than just the stimulus payment. So they're eligible for the earned income tax credit. They're eligible for child tax credit. Those are refundable payments. So even if the person has no tax liability, they get that money back, as well as the stimulus payment. So we're hoping that in screening the Rhode Island Works families, those who have earnings will be filing a full tax return, not using the portal. The third group, and there's about 1,000 families in this circumstance, are where the parent or caregiver is enrolled in SSI, so they get the federal disability payment, but the children are in Rhode Island Works, and the SSI payment does not count as income in determining eligibility for Rhode Island Works families. So you can have a parent getting the full SSI payment of $700 plus, and then the children receiving the cash benefit. Say there were 2 kids, they'd get $449 a month for the kids, and the parent would be getting the SSI. Those families really want to file right away through the non-filer portal, the quick filing portal, because that's the way for them to get both the stimulus payment for the parent, the $1,200, and the $500 payment for each child right away. So while the SSI recipients will get their payments automatically, so single adults who get SSI can wait and they'll wait and get the check automatically. But if there is a parent with dependents who's getting SSI, they want to file through the non-filer portal, because otherwise the parent will get the SSI check him or herself, and the children's benefits will not be made available until when the 2020 tax returns are due, and that means that the parent would need to file a tax return at that even get the $500 for their kid. Really, really important to file, to have all people who are on SSI and have dependents to file right away. Christina mentioned that people who get SSDI or retirement benefits, that's the Social Security payments where people have paid in and then are recouping a benefit when they retire or become disabled. If they have dependents, they only have until tomorrow to file through the portal to claim the benefits for their dependents. But Rhode Island Works families generally do have a parent who is getting SSDI. The SSDI money does count, and usually if you have SSDI, you're getting more money than is allowed under the Rhode Island Works program. So again, bottom line, families in Rhode Island Works on SSI should file right away. Parent has not worked in 2019, file through the non-file portal, and if the parent has had earnings, file for the full, file a full tax return to be able to get the other tax credits as well as the stimulus payment. Next slide, please. So the other group that I wanted to mention are people who get the GPA Bridge Program. This is for adults who don't have kids, who have a disability, have applied for SSI benefits from the Social Security Administration, and are waiting for a decision. They're also enrolled in Medicaid. They get what's called a bridge payment of $200 a month, which is a bridge from when they apply for benefits until Social Security makes a decision. Actually a loan, because if the individual wins their SSI case ultimately, then the $200 a month that's been paid out from the retroactive check. So, and if they lose, there's no need to pay back. There are about 150 individuals receiving bridge payments now. There may be a number of people in the homeless population who are getting this very meager payment. They also would use the non-filer portal to claim the stimulus payment. That's fairly straightforward for the GPA folks. So that's my little portion, and I'd be happy to answer any questions during the question and answer period at the end. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Linda. Really, really appreciate you being on to give that excellent update. So now we are going to be joined by our fabulous General Treasurer, Seth Magaziner. Is he? I don't see him on yet. I'm just going to.
He's there.
He is. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Really well.
I just want to start.
Treasurer Magaziner, you have the floor.
All right. Can you all hear me? Yes? No?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Well, I want to start by thanking you all for the work that you do. It's always important, but especially in times like these, because, you know, if there's one thing that we are seeing over the last few weeks, it's that while the virus doesn't know anything about the people that it infects, the structures and the inequities of our society are causing the impact to fall disproportionately on people who are able to afford it the least. And that's our communities of color, it's our lower income communities. And unfortunately, both the health impact and the financial impact is already more acute on these already vulnerable populations. So to all of you, and I know we have a number of people on this webinar, I just say thank you. I know these are bizarre times and surreal times, but keep it up, like keep working hard and keep doing everything you can to get help to people who need it. I want to be very brief. There were just a few things that I wanted to highlight that are resources that might be helpful to you and to the populations that you serve. And then I wanted to make one sort of legislative plug toward the end. In terms of programs that might be helpful, a couple of things. First, in our office, we run a program called the Crime Victims Compensation Fund. This is a fund to help victims of violent crime and their family members with expenses related to the crimes. You know, when we think about being the victim of violence, whether it's, you know, an assault or a rape or worst case, a homicide, we often think about the physical and emotional trauma, but we don't always think about the fact that there can also be a lot of financial harm that comes from being a victim in one of those situations. So this program exists to help victims of violent crimes and their family members. We can reimburse up to $25,000 of expenses related to the crimes. So everything from funeral costs to healthcare not covered by insurance. But the reason that I wanted to bring it up today, that I think is especially important for this group, is that through the Crime Victims Compensation Program, we also cover relocation expenses which is particularly relevant for victims of domestic violence. As you probably know, there are a lot of people who are in unhealthy, abusive relationships that they feel they can't leave because they have nowhere else to go. And you know, many of these people, when they do finally leave, they you know, they end up in a shelter. They end up, you know, looking for temporary housing. But there are a lot of people who, for whatever reason, can't do that or choose not to do that, or are able to do it for a while, but it's not sustainable for a longer term, and so they end up right back in that bad situation that they were trying to leave. And so the Crime Victims Compensation Program in our office can pay for the costs of helping a victim of abuse relocate. We can cover hotel room stays, and we can cover deposit and rent on a new apartment up to $2,500. And you know, we're very discreet about it, anonymous. The hotel room nights are all you know, on our card, so that the name of the victim is not involved at all. And particularly for those emergency relocations, we can turn them around sometimes in hours, so we can move very quickly. It does, this is a federal regulation because the program is mostly federally funded. Unfortunately, we do require either a police report or a restraining order. But unlike the other things that we cover in the Crime Victims Program, it's not a reimbursement. So everything else that we normally cover, like health costs and transportation and funeral and all that, you know, the individual has to incur the expense first and then we reimburse. That's not true with relocation. With relocation, like I say, we have our card that we can pay for those hotel rooms on the same day, which helps move the process along quite a bit. So that's one resource that I just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware of. We're trying to get the word out because, you know, there have been reports, understandably, that domestic violence is on the rise in this era of sequestering. But despite that, our call volume for this program has gone down significantly, which is a troubling sign. So again, we want help in getting the word out. A couple of other resources that I'll highlight. We work a lot in our office with an organization called the Capital Good Fund that some of you may be familiar with. They were started in Rhode Island as an organization that offers small dollar loans, primarily to the lower income individuals, that are alternatives to payday loans. So if, you know, somebody's having a really tough time, they need $500 or $1,000, you know, as opposed to the payday lenders, which charge 260% annualized interest in Rhode Island, Capital Good Fund will offer loans for much less. And in response to the coronavirus crisis, they have launched a new set of loans to help people with their expenses if they've encountered some disruption due to the virus and the social distancing shutdowns. These loans are for, let me make sure I get these numbers right here. They come with a 5% interest rate, and they are for $300 to $1,500 with a payback period of 16 months and no payments due the first 4 months. So these are, again, emergency loans, small dollar loans. You know, loans are never as good as grants, but this is, I think, a useful tool that's available, that's an alternative to payday loans, which apparently are where a lot of people go, unfortunately, when they're in a bind. So Capital Good Fund, you can go to their website and they have a lot of information there. Finally, I always am plugging our unclaimed property program because, again, this is free money in the sense that it's, you know, it's not taxable, it's not anything like that, but we have literally hundreds of millions of dollars that we are trying to get back to the rightful owners, and disproportionately our unclaimed property claims belong to lower income populations and populations where people move around a lot. Because basically what unclaimed property is It's when a company owes you money, but they don't know how to find you. It becomes unclaimed. They don't get to keep your money. It becomes unclaimed property and it comes over to us. So for example, it could be a utility company that owes you a rebate, or it could be a cell phone company, or it could be your security deposit for an old apartment that the landlord owes you. And again, particularly for populations that have to move around a lot, it's easy for these companies or these holders of the money to lose track of where people have gone. That's how it becomes unclaimed property. It ends up in our office, and it's our job to reunite it with the rightful owner. And we will hold on to that money forever. It can be as little as a few dollars, or it can be well into the thousands of dollars. And so, you know, this is a program that we have a lot of fun with, and like when we market it, we tend to like be lighthearted about it, but you know, it can really be a lifesaver for people, like especially in times like these, having an extra few $100s. And again, we will turn these claims around quickly. We can typically get the money out the door, you know, in a matter of a week or two. So the best way to do that is to go to findrimoney.com. And you can search yourself. You can search, you know, any clients that you all work with at your various organizations. They can search their family members, their friends. And also, by the way, businesses and nonprofit organizations can have unclaimed property too. So check the names of all of your organizations, because you never know. Final thing I wanted to say is, you know, I know that this group does a lot of absolutely vital advocacy work around housing issues in Rhode Island. And I'll just say that, you know, I've been spending a lot of my time the last couple months working on state budget and cash flow issues and making sure that we are able to continue to pay the bills, even though all of our tax revenue has disappeared. And we've made a lot of progress, is the good news. So we're in a good place now, at least for the next couple months. You know, I know that the governor and the legislature have a big job ahead of them in rewriting the budget. And so rewriting the budget to incorporate all of the new challenges that we're facing as a result of the virus. And so I just want to impress upon this group, it's more important than ever that we lobby really hard to get some of these affordable housing proposals in the final budget. And that includes, by the way, the proposals that was in the governor's original budget, which I know for many of us was not as much as we were hoping for and was not perfect and yada, yada, but still really good. And in particular, for the first time ever, would have included a permanent funding stream for housing, which again, may not have been as much as we had hoped for, but it was at least a start. And we've got to do everything we can to make sure that that stays in the budget, because the budget's going to be going through some pretty dramatic rewrites. And so, you know, I know that Christina and some of the others on the call here are very experienced organizers. We're going to have to adapt to a more remote brand of organizing and lobbying. But these next like 6 weeks or so are going to be absolutely vital, and we need to make sure that these housing proposals make it into the final budget intact as much as possible. And of course, I'm here for you as an ally in that fight. So I don't know how long I was supposed to talk for. Maybe it was not this long, so I apologize. But I thank you all for having me, and I thank you especially for the work that all of you are doing to help Rhode Islanders in need in this very vital time. It's a challenging time, but if we work really hard, we'll get through it. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for being on with us, and you spoke perfectly. This, all the information you gave. I mean, we could sit here and listen to all the great updates and info that your office has. Really, really appreciative of you joining and talking with us and sharing this. I think what we said for questions, there's going to be a Q&A after this. I don't know how much longer you can be with us, but there's going to be a Q&A section at the end. And also, I know that if Leanne is on, so if there are any questions that come on specifically for your office, she can bring them back too. But,
yeah, I've only got a couple more minutes, but Leanne will be on, and she is she I'm sure will be able to answer any questions that you all have.
Great. Then we will move on to the next presenter. Unless there any last thing that you'd like to share or talk about before we do that?
Nope, all set.
Again, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for all the work that your office is doing
Keep up the
to
good work, everyone. Thank you.
expand these resources to folks. And I want to underline in a huge way what the treasurer said about the need to advocate for funding in the budget for affordable housing construction. That is going to be paramount. The May, if I can put like my organizer policy hat on for a quick second, the May revenue estimating conference is going to be happening in a couple of weeks. And that pretty much guarantees that the General Assembly is going to be coming back in some form to pass a budget by June. So it is going to look, budget fights are already really hard for our team, right? Like we already have a big mountain to climb, but in this new world, it's going to be even taller, and it's going to require even more collaboration and an even louder voice and even stronger advocacy. So really important for us to remember that we have this coming up, and this is a great place for us to make a huge difference to help our folks in the long term. So look for updates from us about that, action steps you can take and what's happening in the coming weeks. But we're definitely going to be calling on all of our colleagues, comrades, and friends to help move this forward, because this certainly impacts all of us. So with that, I'm really, really pleased to turn it over to Kanika Pook, who is the VitaSite Coordinator, and Director of Programs at the Center for Southeast Asians. She will be speaking about the VITA program and the great work there. So Kanika, please take it away. You have the floor.
All right, thank you for having me. So I'm going to talk to you all about a little bit about VITA. I'm going to give you the basics and how we're helping with the challenges we have so far. So what is VITA? VITA is the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. That's what it stands for. It is a free tax preparation program for individuals and families making less than $56,000. Now, it's a soft number, so if you do make more than that, we work with you case by case. So more than not, we will not turn anybody away. We do mostly simple tax returns. So for example, if you do Airbnb or if you rent a room or rent floors in your house, we unfortunately cannot do those tax returns. So we just focus on the more simple tax return. We can do 1099. So if you do Uber, if you do like a food delivery service that gives you a 1099, we can do that. So where are locations? There are many VITA sites throughout Rhode Island and all over the country. Actually, the program is over 50 years old. It's partly funded by the nonprofit Community Service Division of the IRS, and locally, the United Way of Rhode Island gives us funding. So right now, unfortunately, some VITA sites are closed to help slow the spread of COVID-19, but some sites are doing virtual VITA. It's a drop-off method to help clients still, but we're still keeping our social distancing. Clients can call individual sites directly to see if they are open. And also, I want to let you guys know that we can do prior years. So our software, we're able to do 2019 for sure, 2018, 2017, and in 2016. Anybody who has old years that they haven't done, we could connect them to other places that would be able to help them, that would be free too. So talk to one of the VITA sites and they can help you. So CC is part of the Providence Coalition. There are 9 sites in this coalition. Right now, we are doing virtual VITA at our lead agency for the Providence Coalition. It's at Federal Hill House, located on 9 Cortlandt Street in Providence. Their phone number is 401-421-4722. So the hours that we've set aside for virtual VITA there are Mondays and Wednesdays from 9 to noon, Tuesdays 5 to 7. No appointment needed. So individuals, families could go drop it off there. There is somebody there. She'll look at the paperwork, make sure everything's there, get a good callback number just in case we need to have questions. So how VITA works is that a person does the tax return, the preparer does it. We always have a second pair of eyes. So second person looks at it and quality reviews it. So we do it just as good as any other paid preparer place, or because we are IRS certified. So what you need for the drop off is that you have to bring all your IDs, all the socials on anybody on the tax returns, know the birth dates of everyone on the return, bring all your income. Mostly that is the W-2s as well as the 1099s. And then now more than not, it's so important if you have banking information to bring in your routing number and your account number, so that way we could file your taxes electronically and have that information so that the IRS could find you as soon as possible so that they could give you the stimulus payment. And all those rules apply to whether or not you qualify. So again, you need to have a social. But for VITA, we can help individuals file tax returns for those who have ITINs. So, and we can help you apply for ITINs. Now, who should file? Normally, individuals making pretty much the deduction amount are required to file. So for an individual, for a single person, it's $12,200. For couples, it's $24,400. For head of households, it's $18,350. But right now, I want to help in emphasizing that if you have any money that you earn through a job, through a part-time job, even for one day, I want you to know that we can help you file your taxes. You'll get an income credit, as well as the IRS could find you faster once you file that tax return. And so that's basically the emphasis that I want to make in terms of what VITA could do. Please ask any questions, and I would be more than glad to answer any details that you want me to go over. But the next thing I want to go over is pretty much the scams that are going around and how different people are trying to take advantage of our clients and even ourselves who might be mistaken for what people are asking about. So I want to emphasize that the IRS will never ask you for any information. So believe me, I've had direct contact with them for different reasons. You call them. IRS will not call you for the most part. And then they write you a letter, and the letter, you know, is from the IRS because there's certain symbols and certain signage that they have. So I want to go over a few scams that are going on right now. So the first are phishing and malware scams. Scammers are sending texts, emails, claiming that you could get your money faster by sending personal information if you click the link. Do not reply or click these links. Just delete it immediately. Don't even get curious and see what they say or find, because they could figure out your username and passwords and get into your email as well as your other logons. Phone scams. So there's a lot of scammers calling to pretend that they're IRS agents. And to verify personal information, please do not give them anything over the phone. Just hang up on them. Do not engage with them. They will try to get you because they're trying to scare you, saying that if you tell them certain things, you'll get the money. And that's not the case. Bank scams. So scammers may call or email pretending to work for a bank to ask you for your account information and your social security number. Please do not give them any information. Delete that email immediately. Bank representatives will not call you or ask you for their your information. That is not what they do. There's also counterfeit check claims scams that are going around where they're sending you a fake check or a check that looks like a stimulus check, and they get you to sign it. Don't do that, because that's not real. Again, we went over with you, stimulus checks will be direct deposited into your accounts and they will send it to your house. It might take a while, so if you do have any questions of anything that you're getting, you could show one of the tax sites or one of your case managers, and we would be glad to help verify if it's a real check. And don't call or visit a number that claims to be from the IRS, because most of the time those are scams. So I want to reiterate that IRS will not contact you. And this is one of the challenging things that I'm feeling and seeing, is that clients would want their money fast, and we are working together really hard to try to help clients get into the system directly to get that money. So I want us to emphasize to our clients that if anybody's telling them, oh, I found out a way, or I heard of a way for you to get your money faster, for them to be suspect in it and not just to start, you know, to do anything that they would have concerns about. So that's what I wanted to share with you. I think that,
Tanika. But yeah, just can't emphasize this enough. IRS, again, like Tanika was saying, they'll never ask you for personal information, identifying information. I mean, I've gotten calls from folks who've said, oh, this my bank, I got this email from my bank saying asking me for my social security number. that's a scam. Don't ever enter identifying information like that. I also want to just highlight on this slide, the Rhode Island Attorney General has a consumer protection unit, and you might be able to get help or assistance from there if you've been some of one of these scams. You can call the number there. You can also go on their website and get more information. And then one thing I want to announce briefly, the coalition has been working with the VITA program. So huge shout out to Kanika and Kim Fernandez at Federal Hill House. We want to be able to connect our shelter folks who are staying in shelters with this resource. So we're going to be setting up some virtual clinics connecting local VITA sites with local shelters. So that way, if people have questions about filing a return, or how do I file this versus EIP, or can you help me file a tax return, that will be available. And so if you are on this call and you are a shelter provider, just know that myself or Yaliska will be reaching out really soon to see when would be a good time to schedule these. Thank you so much to Kanika and to Kim and to the team at Federal Hill House and CC for their help with this. They've been so gracious, and they've given us their availability of when sometimes work for them. So we're just going to hook it up and make sure that we can connect people with this really, really important resource. So huge thank you. And again, like VITA, this is something that is available certainly during tax season, but there are even VITA sites, I think there's at least one that is open all year round. So rather than someone going to H&R Block or Jackson Hewitt and handing over their return or paying $150 or $300 to be told that they actually owe taxes, they can connect with a VITA preparer who will do this, answer questions and file returns for free. And they are fantastic. I have nothing but glowing things to say about the statewide VITA team for all volunteers. And hey, if you find somebody who gets passionate about taxes and likes doing your taxes and will work with you for free, I say you always call that person up. Keep that person on speed dial in your phone, right? Okay, so now we're going to move in to the question and answer section. So thank you so much, everyone, for being present and part of this. If you have a question, folks, I should say folks who have submitted questions already, we put them here in a Google Doc, so I'm going to be reading them through. Please feel free to keep entering questions. We are, the webinar goes until 1 o'clock, and it's 11:57 right now, so we got an hour and 3 minutes to really do a deep dive, so please don't hesitate to answer. And again, if you can send your question through the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask your question out loud. Just saying, please, if you do unmute yourself to verbally ask your question, if you could just identify yourself using your name, your pronouns. If you'd like, you can also include the organization you're with, if you represent an organization, and then your question. So, but to start, I am going to just go through the questions that we already have. So from Maria Rivera, can we receive this information in an email? I think that was referring to all the great information that the treasurer shared. And yes, so everyone should have received the slide deck and the presenter notes, but we will be, after the webinar wraps, we'll also be sending a recording of the webinar, which includes a transcript. But I've also reached out to the wonderful Leanne Byrne, who's a legislative director for the treasurer, asking for more information, as she has sent me a panoply of links that I will be including on follow-up emails, so people will have this information in their hands after this. So then another question came related to the information updates the treasurer shared from Irma, pardon me if I'm pronouncing your last name wrong, Pires. What is the process to request a relocation expenses? Do you have to be documented? So I checked in with Leanne, and Leanne, if you can unmute yourself and you'd like to take the question, like, please, by all means. But she says one of the links that she has shared, the CVCP link, folks can use that, and that answers all questions. That tells you the process for how to access this, these funds and this resource. Immigration status is not asked, so your immigration status does not determine your eligibility. So this is open to all Rhode Islanders, which I am very, very happy to hear. This is a really important resource. So just know that this is something that is available to all of our neighbors, regardless of their immigration status. And Leanne says, I can't unmute. Oh, I'm sorry, we can't hear your beautiful voice, but the information I provided is the factual information. So again, this is something that's open to all folks, regardless of immigration status, and there will be more information sent to attendees that outline the process for how you access these resources. So then there is another question, and I'm going to pose this to all presenters from Crystal Figueroa. My parents are married, file jointly, and do not claim any dependents. My mother had experienced identity fraud, so somebody stole her mother's identity. So when she files her taxes, it requires a PIN. They had filed taxes every year and just recently filed their 2019 taxes about 2 weeks ago. She has not received any stimulus deposit, and when we check on the IRS website, it states, quote, unable to determine eligibility at this time, end quote. What could be causing this issue?
Can I take an early try at answering that? So my first feedback is, how did they file? Did they e-file or did they send in paper? From what I've seen, because I've been tracking this for a few clients, is that anybody sending in paper returns, IRS is not doing it right now. They just don't have the manpower. They received the paperwork, but they've not processed it. So if you go online to find out if it's a paper return, so that might be a holdup. But if it was e-filed, just wait another few days, and then e-filing again. If they did direct deposit, they would be found really quickly. But if they want a paper check, they will fall into the group that will get a paper check.
Thank you, Kanika. That's really, really helpful. Unfortunately, Crystal's question does not specify whether they filed electronically or via paper, but I'll get that. And also, she emailed this question. So Kanika, is it okay if I connect you and Crystal via email?
Yes, definitely.
Perfect.
And can
Thank you
I
so
add
much.
one more thing for listeners and as well as the panelists? I've seen proof that they're starting to send out the hard checks the 24th. So by next week, some people will start getting it, if not over the weekend, depending on where they're mailing it from. But I've seen a date because I helped the client look up their check because we couldn't help them update their bank information. So they're saying the check is being sent out on the 24th, so April 24th. So good news there for those getting checks that did 2019 or 2018 tax returns.
Oh, that is fantastic news. That is really, really great news. Thank you so much for sharing that update, Kanika. That's great to hear. So then there is one. Oh, Crystal says, I believe it was e-filed. So Kanika, I know you just said this, and please feel free to chime in if I'm repeating your words wrong. But part of Kanika's answer, she said that if folks have e-filed, just wait a couple of days and try to e-file again. But Crystal, I will connect you and Kanika via email so that she can use her knowledge and expertise, which far outweigh mine, to help you with this situation. So now a question from Wendy Thomas. I am on STI. I have a student loan taken out. Yesterday, I got a check that says it's a refund on my student loan. I just want to know if it's legitimate. It is the exact amount that they take out monthly. And I'm going to pose that to all panelists because I'm not sure which of you that would, perhaps Catherine, this might be, since this is a Social Security customer, you might know how to best direct her. Any thoughts, folks?
Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Great. So I'm not really quite sure what she's referring to. Is the amount that she's saying the amount that we withheld is the amount of the check that she received?
So I think she's saying she has her student loan amount taken out of SSDI. And
One thing I might add here, I know that federal student loans have all been automatically like paused,
Sure.
and you don't have to opt in or out. So it could be that it's a federal student loan that's automatically gone into this like COVID forbearance, and she had already automatically sent that out and they're sending it back to her. So that's just one hypothetical that I say as someone who has student loans, and is not necessarily representative of the student loan industry, but that's where my mind first went, that it's actually more likely associated with the student loan vendor and not the SSI. But I'll let you finish, Christina, but I thought I'd add that in quickly before we went down the rabbit hole.
Oh, no, that's fine. Thank you for saying that. Wendy, are you able to unmute yourself? If you can, would you like to ask your question or a follow-up question? Well, actually, Wendy, if you can unmute yourself, please feel free and just chime in at any time. Or if you have a follow-up question, you can put it in the chat box. But Catherine, were you going to try and tackle the question as well?
Yeah, so if we're withholding federal debt, that normally is something that is, you know, the wheels of government turn ever so slowly. So if we're withholding that, we certainly wouldn't be doing this that quickly. So I'm thinking, you know what, I would be very leery at what that payment is. You know, if she can verify that with the wherever the student loans, but if we're withholding either student loans or garnishments, those all normally take court orders for us to withhold any kind of garnishment and stuff like that. So I'm not really quite sure where that check is coming from, and did she receive any other communication about it saying that she would be receiving a reimbursement, or is there a number that she could call for the student loan that she might be able to verify that with?
So Wendy says, no, I can't verify, but Jeff Sheehan commented, quote, federal student loans are in forbearance administratively until September 30th of this year. If you paid after March 13th, you will get a refund for that payment. This happened to me also, end quote. So I think this might be something that's happening for all folks, which as somebody who made a nice big payment on my student loan to try to just get that off of my plate. I hope they don't refund me. I want them to take my money. But I'm going to look into this more because it seems like this is something that's happening outside of Social Security.
And one thing I'll add just on the student loans is that only the federal student loans are in this forbearance. The federal government doesn't have necessarily control and oversight over private student loans. So you want to make sure when you're looking through your budget that you're distinguishing between the two and continuing to make payments on the ones that you are owed, that they're still anticipating that you're paying. So that's just one thing to like plug, kind of when we talk about evictions and paying your rent, like just because there's a moratorium on evictions doesn't mean you shouldn't pay your rent if you can afford to pay your rent.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's a good point.
I just wanted to add,
Oh, please,
Christina, this is not related to her question, but just spinning off of the student loan issue. When you talked earlier about the fact that other than child support arrears, nothing is being taken out of the stimulus payment before it's paid out to the individual. When we talked about overdue taxes or overpayments for public benefits, it's also the case that any student loan that is due is not taken out of the stimulus payment, which is a separate issue from what was just being discussed, but I thought I would just play off of the student loan issue.
No, I appreciate that. It's definitely germane to the conversation. Thank you for sharing that, Linda. It's a really important consideration to be aware of. And so now I'm looking, we have a question from Alexandria Gonzalez, who I think she might be on. Alex, are you on to ask the question? Okay, I will read it. So what should I do? My situation, I am on SSI, but I also filed in 2018. I didn't get my money. The IRS says they got it. They got my return, but they are saying they don't have it if they use Chime or Borrow. So I think I might be missing a step here, but I guess generally speaking, this is probably a question for all of you. But Catherine, again, I'm going to ping you in particular since Alex is an SSI recipient. So she filed a return. She hasn't received, and she filed a return, or she used the portal, but she hasn't received the money. The IRS says that they have it and they sent it, but and Alex, if you're on and I'm not representing this properly, I apologize, but I remember from our conversation yesterday, you had mentioned that when you went to file, it said that you got the message that your payment had been sent to your bank, but the bank that you had reached out to told you that they didn't have this account on file anymore. So I think that there are a lot of folks who are probably in this situation that are getting, that are going through the steps and filling it out well, and then are getting, these notices from banks saying, oh, well, this account doesn't exist anymore, or notice from the IRS saying like, oh, well, we've sent it, and, caught in this place between IRS saying that the payment's been sent and the bank saying, oh, well, we don't have it. So for folks who are in this situation, panelists, what do you recommend people do?
So my question is, the bank account that she put on her tax return should not be the one where her EIP is going. It should be wherever her SSI check is going.
Okay.
So if that bank account that she used, that she's checking, is from her tax return, I would think that that's probably not where it went.
Can I also clarify if possible? So say a person who is SSI, SSCI, SSA also had income to file a tax return. Is the IRS taking the tax return information above the SSI info? Because then that causes confusion too.
No. If you get, wherever you get your SSI or your SSDI or your retirement check, that's where your EIP is going.
So regardless if you did taxes?
Correct. The taxes is only to determine who's going to get it and if you had dependents. So
Okay.
now if, that's why that press release went out yesterday, because the Treasury was one and the IRS was the one who said, anybody who is receiving Social Security benefits and will get their automatic $1,200, but if they have dependents 17 or under, they will not get them for them, and they need to take action by tomorrow.
So my follow-up question is, for folks who are in this kind of a situation and need information and need guidance, where is the best place to refer folks to?
So Social Security is not the place to get any answers because we are not in charge of issuing the payments. And unfortunately, I've been told that the IRS does not have a telephone number that anyone can call and ask questions to. So a lot of people are calling Social Security, and because we are somewhat involved, and we were asked to be involved because, we have connections with millions of people, and, there is a connection with our recipients, but we are not directly related in any way to issuing the payments. So, and it's natural for people to call us and ask the questions, but we cannot provide answers. And from what I understand, the IRS is, all you can do is go to their website, really, for guidance at this point. They're not providing any other customer service other than that.
So can I suggest that she wait another week or two, if possible, to see if that results in a check being mailed to her? Because contradicting bank information.
I'm just
As
writing
long
that.
as the home address is correct, maybe, hopefully the address on that return is where she's still living, and hopefully they'll default it because the bank now pushed it back. They will go and get a check.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I really, really appreciate your information. So I'm looking at our questions doc. Does anyone else have any questions that they would like to ask? Either in the chat or unmuting yourself. Going once, going twice. Okay, well, as I say, no one ever complains about a webinar ending early. So I'm just want to say thank you very much again to all of our fantastic presenters who joined us. I hope that folks found this webinar to be very informative and to be helpful. Again, we're going to be sending out materials, including a recording that will come with a transcript, and you'll be seeing some more materials from us, and they will be bilingual English and Spanish in the coming week. If you would like to connect with any of our presenters, or if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I mean, just because we're saying goodbye for now does not mean that our conversations and connections are over. We want to be as helpful as possible to folks. We want to make sure that we're serving our community in the way that they need. But again, thank you for everybody for attending. Big thanks to our presenters, and huge thank you to everybody for all the work that you're doing in this really wild and stressful time, whether that is, managing a shelter, taking care of your family, doing all of these things at once. There's so much that's on our plates, and it's really inspiring and incredible to see the courage of folks who are, still moving through their day and doing all of these things and helping all of these folks, with all of this extra that's just been plopped onto them. So everyone, be well, be safe, and I hope that we talk very soon. Thank you again. Have a great one.
Thank you for all you're doing, Christina and Caitlin and the
Thank you.
coalition.
It's a pleasure, especially to do it with all of these wonderful folks. So take care.
Bye-bye.
And be well, everyone.